It does not mean that you cannot manifest. It does not mean that you cannot manifest in being around toxic people or being in toxic environments, but it's just going to be 10 times harder. If you're building a sandcastle and you have the base and the foundation is looking all good, but you have people that keep coming across, keep walking past and kicking the sand, and you keep rebuilding, keep repatching, they keep kicking the sand, it doesn't mean that eventually you will not complete that sandcastle, okay? But it's going to take 10 times longer and it's going to be 10 times harder. If you're new, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, whichever side of the screen that I have it on, as well as the bell. So anytime any new content is uploaded, you're going to be the first to know about it, you guys. But I wanted to make this video specifically for those of us that are out there. Like, obviously, none of us are perfect. And I always say that we are on this journey together. We're manifesting our goals. We're working to level up, glow up, all that good stuff. And a lot of my videos are on tips and tricks and techniques and things like that, which 100% you do want to put into practice. But just as importantly are the videos about self-love and removing yourself as much as you possibly can, right? From toxic people, environments that no longer serve you, okay? But actually probably never served you, but especially not in this higher timeline, that you're working to align yourself with. So I think it's so important, you guys, because some people say, well, hey, I thought this, channel is supposed to be about manifestation. Why are we talking about all this leveling up, glow up stuff? Okay, well, we're talking about all of that because all of it connects, right? Think of it almost as like a chain, right? With links that interconnect, right? And one link needs the other link to be stronger, and it's the same way. I'll just use this as an example. Can a flower, right? Can it actually grow when it is stuck under concrete? It can, right? If there's any cracks in that concrete, it certainly can bud, it can come up, but it's going to be much, much harder. You're not going to see as much growth, okay? And you literally would have to wait for there to be a crack in the concrete in order for that flower to actually bloom and be seen and come up. So, and it's the same way, right? I always say for us to treat our manifestation, our goals, whatever that goalpost is. And as I mentioned before, it's going to look very different for many of us across the board, right? For one person, it could be career elevation. For someone else, it could be, a creative project taking off. It could be travel, right? Traveling more. It could be weight loss. It could be a ton of different things, right? A relationship is going to look very different. But I always say that we do want to treat our manifestations, our things like we would treat anything that's precious, right? If you're holding something that's very valuable, is precious, you are going to be very conscious of the environment that it's in, who you allow around it, who you allow to handle it. Same thing goes, right? And you being that manifestation, a walking, powerful being, you have to really start, and I've mentioned this in a previous video where we talk about doing a lot of self-auditing, and the self-audit is just you being super, super honest with yourself, right? You don't have to share your audits with anybody, right? This is just something that you're doing for yourself, where you are really evaluating your own habits. Do you have toxic habits? Okay. Do you have any toxic habits? Are you placing yourself in toxic environments around toxic people? What are you doing? What are your daily, what is actually in alignment? And when you do these self audits, you're deciding from there what needs to stay, what needs to go, what's no longer in alignment with your path that you're moving on, and what is actually potentially stifling your growth. That could come in many, many different forms, right? And toxic people, then toxic environments, that could be a work environment. That could be you still hanging out in an old neighborhood that no longer serves you, right? It could be family. It could be old friends that you grew up with, or, there's no, and I wish that it were, I totally wish that it were, but there is no filter, I guess you could say. There's no specific, toxicity isn't valid and when it's put in this category or when you put it in. No, it could be across the board. Okay. And but it's really about you doing those self-evaluations, the self-audit means, you know, your own habits, you know, how you think, what it is you're consuming, what it is you're watching, you're listening to, people that you're putting yourself around voluntarily. It could be, you know, your own habits. What are you consuming? What are you exuding, right? How are you carrying yourself? What are your habits? All of that. And really be like totally, completely, unabashedly honest with yourself. It doesn't mean you have to share and broadcast, this is my self-audit, I'm cutting you out, or I'm cutting this habit out, I'm no longer doing this, like, it's not necessary. And that's for different reasons too. That's another video, but you don't have to share your self-audit. But definitely, if you want to make some kind of list of what needs to stay, what you plan to cut out, adjustments, right? And this is something that should be done on a continuous basis. Even once you reach your manifestation goals, or, you know, whatever that level up or glow up looks like for you, this is something that should be continuously done. I always say that, you know, life is a continuous evolution. At least it should be, right? So people that are like, I'm the same that I've been since I was 8 years old. Okay, well, I don't know. I kind of look side-eyed at someone, because there's a lot of things that you should have learned, evolved. You know, I always say, you know, and I'm sure a lot of other people say this too, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. Okay. And I also believe that the wisest man will die with more to learn. Okay. It should be a continuous evolution. So, you know, for people that are like, I'm the same, I've never changed, like, that's kind of like, I don't know. But anyway, the self-audits is something that you should be doing on a continuous basis. And like I say, even about putting yourself in toxic environments around toxic people, it does not mean that you cannot manifest. It does not mean that you cannot manifest in being around toxic people or being in toxic environments, but it's just going to be 10 times harder. And I also use the sandcastle example. I'm going to use it again, that if you're building a sandcastle and you have the base and the foundation is looking all good, but you have people that keep coming across, keep walking past and kicking the sand, and you keep rebuilding, keep repatching, they keep kicking the sand, it doesn't mean that eventually you will not complete that sandcastle, okay? But it's going to take 10 times longer, and it's going to be 10 times harder, just because of the environment that obviously you're building it in, the people that you have coming around, right? And you know, so always think of that, you guys. And it doesn't mean suddenly you got to cut everybody out, but you have to really like decide and know what is in alignment. Okay. Because when we talk about manifestation, which is, you know, law of assumption, you aligning yourself with that desired 5D version of yourself, whatever that may be, really presently where you're at now, what is in alignment. Some things are going to be in alignment with that goal, that version, but there's going to be a lot of things that may need to go, people that need to go, old habits, right? Maybe you're trying to break a habit and you're around people that still have that habit. Maybe you are, you know, wanting to stretch out and travel more, and you're around people that just do not understand the need for that. Okay. So, you know, this obviously could be applied across the board in a lot of different areas. But also, you guys, when you evaluate like connections that you have, right? And it doesn't necessarily always have to be trauma bonding or anything like that, but there are people that you meet at different seasons, different times in your life, different eras in your life. And during those seasons, those times, those people might be very complementary. Maybe you guys both have a lot to chat about, a lot to agree about, right? Maybe you guys think the same way, or have shared a lot of the same experiences, or continuing to share a lot of the same experiences or complaints about life, or, you know, whatever that could be. And ultimately, it doesn't always mean that you've outgrown the person. Maybe there is still room for them as you continue to elevate and evolve, but there could be now that you guys, unless you're literally just talking about old times, there may not be a ton that you guys really now have in common. And sometimes even that process can feel uncomfortable, right? Doesn't mean that you have to let go of all, you know, previous friends or connections that you've had. But sometimes, like I say, as you evolve, you change, literally you are becoming a different person. Okay. You can still connect with them over maybe past things, but maybe you think differently now, right? Maybe your approach to life, or maybe you don't have the same complaints that you once had about, just mundane, worldly, life. Your outlook is different, or the environments that you hang in now are different, right? So don't be afraid of that moments where you realize that there is a disconnect, okay? It doesn't mean jump, abandon ship, but it does mean that now you're going to be working more toward cultivating people that, maybe are more aligned to the way that now that you think, or new habits that you've adopted, or routines, right? Maybe you were someone that was never a workout person. Now you enjoy working out, or you never was someone who really worried about healthy eating and things. Well, maybe now, you do. And it's nothing wrong with cultivating friends that also appreciate or understand the value in healthy eating or exercise or whatever that could be, right? Maybe you have maybe you become techie, right? And you're really heavily into technology and all of those different things. And maybe in the past, you were never someone who was really, took the time to learn about different things. And you maybe had complaints about, the world is too speedy, it's moving too fast, and da 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 da. But now maybe you're someone who's super techie, learned a lot of stuff, really into it. And a lot of people that, once maybe thought that way, or just not interested, or just didn't understand a lot of what it is that you're interested in, that you're talking about, they just don't get it. And it doesn't mean, obviously, you're not going to just abandon, ship, but at the same time, it's nothing wrong with cultivating, stretching out, meeting, new people, putting yourself in new environments, and fully aligning with whatever that elevated version is of yourself, right? Living in the end, whether it's, like I say, that's going to look very different across the board, but it is absolutely nothing wrong with, stretching out. Okay. It doesn't mean that you didn't keep it real. It doesn't mean that you are too good or anything like that. It's just you acknowledging your growth. And as you grow and you stretch out, right? Like as a tree gets larger, right? So do those roots, and those roots span out, and it connects and it moves further out, right? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can still be grounded, right? But there's nothing wrong with stretching out. And like I said, when we do the evaluation, a lot of times we will want to say, well, no, this doesn't apply. Yeah, my family is this way. We argue like cats and dogs, or so, just real dysfunctional ways that you guys interact, but you don't really want to acknowledge that things that just is not okay, but you don't want to acknowledge that because it's family, or it's because friends that you grew up with, or because it's your old hometown, or whatever it is. You guys have to stop making excuses. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. What do they say? If it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Okay. Or whatever they say. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Okay. Acknowledge it for what it is. And it doesn't mean cut out, but you may want to make adjustments where maybe you're not as much, right? Connecting with, I don't care whether it's friends, family, old co-workers, whatever, that individuals that are, not serving you. You may want to lessen the amount of time that is spent around individuals that don't make you feel good, that are not aligned, right, with that higher timeline, that higher self. If it is putting you in any kind of emotional distress or whatever, like that is something that you have to really evaluate and put yourself first. Love yourself enough to decide, is this something, family's family, blood is blood, friends are, that knew you however many years back, growing up, old neighborhood. It doesn't mean don't have love for those environments or people or places, but at the same time, love yourself enough to put yourself in healthy environments. Again, think of yourself, as I mentioned before, the example with the flower growing out of concrete. Yeah, it's going to grow, but it's going to have a much harder time, seeing growth. And, it's just not going to grow as much, obviously. And You just don't want that. Okay, you guys? I just think it's so important you guys do those self audits. Know that all of it is linked, right? Your self-care, self-love, removing toxic people, habits, environments, things, removing that is all necessary in order for you to reach your goal and to continue, right? Leveling up should be a continuous, okay? I don't care how old someone is. They could be 99, 100, and they should still have room to level up, okay? Okay, so I'm just saying, it's a continuous evolution, okay? And it should be enjoyable, actually. But it does mean continuing to adjust and realign and tweak and shift, and don't be afraid of that shift. Okay, you guys? But yeah, I love you guys. I hope you guys found value in this video. If you did, give it a big old thumbs up. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, leave lots of comments down below. I always say that a comment that you leave could actually be super helpful, useful to the next person that comes along and reads it. Okay, you guys? So leave lots of comments. I love you guys, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.